Hi, I'm content producer Michael Barrett, and September is Bourbon Heritage Month, and no one knows more about bourbon than Epic Chophouse here in Mooresville. Well, they've teamed up with Southern Distilling in Statesville to celebrate. So I'm downtown here on Main Street at the restaurant to see what they've got planned. So Chef, tell me what makes bourbon such a unique type of whiskey in terms of its characteristics?
You know, all whiskeys throughout the world have to be cereal mashed. And in bourbon whiskey, it has to be a minimum of 51% corn. And then it has to be aged in charred barrels. And for a minimum of 3 years, I believe it is, in order to be considered a bourbon whiskey. And bourbon whiskeys can only be actually classified that way if they're made in America.
So Chef, tell me about Epic Chophouse's connections to bourbon and the types of varieties you offer here.
Well, you know, bourbon has just taken off in the last decade and a half. You know, it was kind of like a slow chart in the early 2000s, but from 2011 till now, it's just skyrocketed. And along the way, we've picked up with using the bourbons as well. And we've grown our bourbon list to quite a multi-shelf bourbon list and a lot of very diverse bourbon list. And it's just, we make, you know, from the Woodford Reserve to the Knob Creek to the Elijah Craig. We use all of them in making our good old fashions and things like that. And the bourbon and the steak, that's American as it gets. They go together extremely. Enjoy it.
And why do you think it is that it has increased in popularity so much? Why does it seem to be something that continues to be taking off? Is it just because of the flavor pairings that
It's good.
Right.
You know, it's things that are good just don't get held back. And I will say this too, that the bourbon makers themselves have done a really good job of making sure their product is good and not just turning it out because it's gaining popularity. They're making sure that their product continues to grow from good integrity in what they're doing.
Cheers.
Cheers to bourbon.
That's right.
Epic Chophouse has planned a number of special promotions for Bourbon Heritage Month. One of those, in partnership with Southern Distilling of Statesville, will be the Southern Star Bourbon Dinner, to be offered September 19th at Epic Chophouse in Mooresville and September 20th at its sister restaurant in Fort Mill, South Carolina.
We have a nice 5-course evening planned for folks with different flights of bourbons, different tastes that they produce over in Southern Star. This is an example of the entree that we're serving at that dinner. It is a 6-ounce filet with our cream spinach and bourbon-infused demi-glace and mushrooms. And that'll pair up real nicely with the paper plane, a traditional old-fashioned drink that is made with bourbon.
Savory bourbon cocktails will be paired with each of the dinner's courses, which will include a charcuterie board with local cheeses and house-cured bacon, smoked lobster tail, roast apple and cranberry stuffed quail, and bourbon praline pecan pie. But the filet will serve as the signature dish.
All right.
That's amazing.
Every day throughout September, Epic Chophouse will introduce a tasting flight of 3 bourbons from their extensive collection. The flights will change weekly.
For a full week, we'll have a menu of bourbon bites at the bar only, and on the back side will be bourbon flights. And there'll be different heritage bourbons from all over the United States, mostly Kentucky and that area, but not limited to Kentucky. And that'll change weekly.
So tell me a little bit about these 2 examples that you have of what you're going to be offering with the Bourbon Bites and Flights menu.
All right, very good. So the Bourbon Bites and Bites, we have our grilled cheese with lobster, or I'm calling it a lobster grilled cheese. It's made with white cheddar, and it's got arugula and spinach in there, some lobster tail, and we boil the lobster tails and put them in, and with some truffle French fries, and our jalapeno honey horseradish dipping sauce. And then we have our crab fritters, these are on our regular menu as well. People really enjoy them, but we're going to get a nice crab going along with that bourbon. And so what we did is we got some good flavor underneath that. We have our green Tabasco butter, which is a nice rich sauce made with the jalapeno Tabasco, and it just carries well into the flavors of the crab meat along with the tobacco road onions. We said, okay, that's great, but we need a trifecta. We need a third item. So we added Monday mashups. And on Monday evenings, we'll have someone here that's an aficionado of bourbon and to just talk bourbon like a sommelier talks wine, with everybody just ordering the flights and getting to know bourbons and coming in and mixing it up at our bar, in our restaurant.
And anyone who has any questions about how the bourbon pairs with various foods, they can ask those questions and get a little insight into
Yes.
what makes it all tick.
Right, very much so. Bourbon is, it has to be aged in charred barrels. So that char flavor comes through, and we cook our steaks at an 1800 degree broiler, which gives a lot of char. So the two chars are already kind of like happy with each other.
For Neighborhood TV, I'm Michael Barrett.